Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here to we got a great Survivor interview here today. I've been meaning to catch up with this person for a while. We were gonna check in during the season, but it didn't work out then. But we had a little bit of time to get the chance to talk this week, so I'm so thrilled to welcome back Andy Rueda. Andy, how are you?
Hey Rob, doing great. I'm so happy that we could make this work. I would have loved to talk during the season, but this is a great opportunity to, do a deep dive on Survivor 48 and catch up. And again, I always have to tell you this. This is part of the dream come true. I've been an RHAP patron for years, as many people know. And so, finally, this is coming together. I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, it's a great thrill whenever we get to do it. I mean, maybe some of the listeners don't know, but we've been talking about Survivor for years.
Yeah. There's an archive out there, a very deep archive. People can snoop if they want. I have talked with Rob. How many hours have we talked? This is before I even heard
Probably
an
what,
email
like
from Survivor.
15, 20 minutes a week for how many years?
I was one of these regular, every year, new people enter the rotation of people who want to call in every week and just speak their mind about Survivor. I was definitely part of that tradition. So it's a very,
And
very
Big
full circle.
Brother.
And Big Brother. Oh, yeah. Listen,
Remember
not
when
to
you
like,
started watching Big Brother 1?
Yes, that was during the pandemic. We all kind of lost our minds at that
Hmm.
period of time. But so through RHAP, I became a huge Big Brother fan, and as well as a Survivor fan. And so, not to like spoil or whatever, but I think that Survivor 48 is kind of a Big Brothery season in many respects. So
Oh,
I'm
I've
I'm
thought
I'm
that
happy
too.
to
Okay.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy to break that down.
let's unpack that.
Yeah.
How's everything going outside of Survivor 48?
I'm doing great. Like Survivor 47 was was a ride of a lifetime. It was amazing. I have since then, had a post Survivor sabbatical, and Rob, as fate would have it, um, my this post Survivor sabbatical has officially ended, and I have started my full time job search today of all
Today.
days.
Okay.
The timing just couldn't work out better, so definitely happy to like get back into real life and so if anyone out there, add me on LinkedIn. If you have any interesting like openings with machine learning engineering, my specialty is natural language processing. My resume has been brushed up today. I'm ready to like get back into real life. My Survivor year has come to an end.
Okay. All right. Well, Andy, I'm sure that your Survivor resume and your work resume are both sterling.
I appreciate that. I
Yes.
appreciate that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Tell me a little bit about your theory of Survivor 48 as a Big Brother season.
Well, something that so my favorite part about Survivor 48 is that it is unique in the context of the new era of Survivor. And that has been compelling for me the entire way. And I think the new era gets a bad rap for being very cookie cutter and samey. And so I love when, a season
So does Big Brother.
happens. Yeah, so it's Big Brother in many respects, right? But what's interesting is, and I'm fascinated about this process, just in the sense that I was on Survivor 47, which is part of the same casting cycle. And I don't know this process. No, players don't know this exact process, but throughout casting, they find the 36 to 40 people that they really like. But then they have to go through this whole process where they're separating them into two different seasons. And I just think it's so fascinating the sort of the emergent social dynamic that happened on 48, especially as it contrasts to 47, because I think you look at each individual with a few exceptions, like they fit the bill of what Survivor is going for these days. They don't stick out too much with a couple exceptions, maybe David being like the biggest exception to that. But whatever, like however it shook out, the groups just couldn't be more different. And coming off of 47, I just have that's really helped me enjoy Survivor 48, how unique it's been. Now, I think with Survivor 48, um, I think it's been defined by sort of the culture that was established um, like throughout the season, sort of by the cast. And I have to say, it does remind me of like modern Big Brother seasons, just how it plays out and the sort of the dynamics at play and how people like talk about strategy. Now, the obvious, right, is that there was a steamroll, like there was a big majority alliance that stuck together, and the status quo was really not upended. The
Mhm.
other similarity is that, a Big Brother majority alliance, it's the power that it's able to leverage is that it wins all the challenges and
The
wins all the
comps.
competition.
Yeah.
Now, this is the same thing as Survivor 48. Like the necklace was traded off between Joe and Kyle and Eva, right? And Shaheen, he grabbed a reward challenge, maybe not immunity. But anyway, and then also they retained the all the advantages throughout the season. This majority alliance, I found that to be super interesting. But I think what's maybe more interesting is like reading kind of between the lines of the edit. I think something that maybe this majority doesn't get as much credit for is probably all the work that they did with the people on the outside. And this is something that Taryn Armstrong will talk about a lot, like the specific tactics used by a Big Brother majority alliance. And that is that they take the outsiders, right? And through like individual relationships, they sort of build a world in which they're not as much on the outside as they are. And that prevents people from making a huge game shifting move for them to rally together and sort of topple the power structure. And I think that as much as people have gotten on the case of players like of Mitch and I don't know, Mary and Star, right? It's frustrating on a week to week basis as a weekly viewer to not see them like make that sort of power shifting move. But I would give a lot of credit to Kyle and Joe and even all of them
Mhm.
for I think it takes just as much strategy to like maintain
Yeah.
sort of a power structure. And that reminds me of Big Brother.
Okay. So great points all around. If I may respectfully push back on that last point, though, that
Yeah.
did you feel like that actually was happening in this season? Where I've
Mhm.
pointed to that as something like when we watched Survivor Redemption Island. Okay,
Yeah.
Boston Rob is working very hard, making multiple alliances with all these different people and really
Yeah.
sort of like selling the dream to
Yeah.
people who aren't really going to the end. It felt
Mhm.
like in this season, this was a little bit more of like, there was the strong 5 or 4, and then
Yeah.
ultimately it was like, okay, this is it. And everybody else, Chrissy, Cedric, ultimately Mary, once David goes, Star, Mitch, and to a lesser degree Camilla, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah.
Like we're full. We're not
Yeah.
taking any new members in the alliance. I'm sorry. It's no hard feelings. You're lovely people, but you can't be in the final 5.
So I think where I would like, I think you have to. So what I've been doing is I feel like I've been reading between the lines of the edit a little bit and piecing together exit interviews. And I think one example I would use is Mitch, right? So Mitch, his portrayal was that he knew he had to make a move, but the timing was never right in his eyes.
Yeah.
That final 8 round wasn't good because he didn't trust Star to, vote with him necessarily. But I think the sort of untold story piecing together is what did he believe? And I think what he believed was that he had an in with Kyle and Camilla, and
Yeah.
the 3 of them started on the tribe together. So I think he had a different view of the closeness between all the different sort of relationships. And I think he was going into the final 5 thinking that he had the majority because Kyle and Camilla have been possibly selling him that bill of goods
Yes.
that you don't need to make a move at 8 because we're going to get the jump on Joe and Eva and we're going to be like the Siva at the final 3. Now, that is something that, a lot of sort of Big Brother players who are not on the very core will believe, and then they get blindsided at the wrong time to send them out before the finals. And so that's just something I feel like I have inferred from how the season came like shook out because
The
it is
shookout.
really shook out whatever.
Yeah.
Because
It's like the cookout.
shook
I'm trying
shook out like the
to
cookout.
combine it to the Big Brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sort of that's my take on it. And so I guess I'm just like reading
No,
between the
I
lines.
hear what
I
you're
think
saying,
that's
but
what
like
happened.
that really wasn't part of the show. Is I guess my
I know. That's tough. So with Survivor 48, I have to say, like my prevailing sort of take on it is I think it was let down by the editing, generally speaking. And I think that the editing took a step back from Survivor 47. I could be very biased about Survivor 47, but I was always impressed during the airing of my season of how they portrayed the storylines. And I think
Yeah.
they did a lot of things that they really knocked it out of the park. And just from my
And
perspective, it
you
was
felt
true to
like
life
that.
while being entertaining.
Yeah, you felt like that it was an accurate depiction of what was actually happening there in Survivor
Yeah.
47.
My opinion is that was very accurate. And it really hit a lot of the beats that I was hopeful for coming home from Survivor 47, thinking it was a great season. And it was a great season for many reasons. I think one of them, this is something that Sam and I, whenever we talk about Survivor, he always brings this up. And I think he said this on a podcast or two. It's like this Survivor 47 had a ton of amazing story arcs and character arcs. And of course, I'm like one of the bigger examples of that on my season, where you could see characters like and the players from episode 1 to the finale just ending up in very different spots and feeling very different ways. And I find that to be like a very compelling that's just compelling storytelling straight up, right? And I think 47 had a lot of that. Now with 48, I think it had great characters and I think it had great moments. But one of the things I would say about Survivor 48 is that it was like repetitive in a lot of ways, right? So like I feel like a lot of the characters who went deep, they had these signature confessionals and then they would like say it every single episode. And I think people picked up on that. You know what I mean? Like Kyle would always have a confessional every episode talking about how he's got a relationship with Camilla, and people don't know that. Eva sticks out in particular. I think Eva, she never throughout the whole season she never had a confessional where she was kind of like worried about the vote. Her signature confessional was like, my alliance is staying tight and we have all the advantages and we're just going to pick them up. And in every episode she had that confessional. And there are many more examples on Survivor 48. And so like as much as I think that they brought together a really compelling group of people, the arcs didn't like, there was not a delta, there was not a big shift in how they felt and their standing in the game. And I think that's, for me, it just made for like non-optimal like storytelling. Yeah, so I think the editing is very different. Now, I would say the person who had the most repetitive confessionals on Survivor 47, I think, is me. So in the post-merge, so like, I had a crazy story arc, right? But in the post-merge, I think that for like the few episodes leading up to Operation Italy, I think I had one confessional every episode where I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing so great. And, no people aren't seeing it. And I'm like running the game. I mean, while that was happening, I was like, yes, more of that. But I think objectively, it was kind of like had that sort of repetitiveness to it. But I think what was great was that it was leading up to something. It was like leading episode to episode. People didn't know where it was leading, but it led up to Operation Italy, which from an editing standpoint, they knocked that out of the freaking park, right? So it was good that there was like a buildup to something grand. Now with 48, I don't know if they had sort of that culmination. I mean, I think that the final 6 round was like a good culmination of what Kyle and Camilla are able to accomplish together, but it didn't hit exactly the same. I don't think.
Operation Italy, it was not.
Now wait, Rob, I have to tell you, I was hard on you in my exit interview because you kept calling it Project Italy, but ever since in the months since, whenever people talk to me about like Operation Italy, like every third person calls it Project Italy. So that's redemption for you. Like that is like a lot of people are calling it Project Italy. That's not something that was like just
maybe I said it wrong and now people
no,
are just like, okay, is it Mandela effect? Okay. Is it actually? No.
So I did I have some thoughts on that.
Okay.
I think it makes sense because
as long as we're not ops.
No, we're definitely not ops. So I think when you're naming something, so a project usually has a code word. So like Project Italy makes sense because Italy doesn't describe what we were doing. But when someone says Operation something, like Operation whatever, like for me, I was saying in the early part of Survivor 47, Operation Get Out of Gata. So like a project has a code word. Operations typically don't have code words. So I think that sort of contributes to it. The reason we call it Operation Italy is, I mean, because the Italian job was taken. We were not allowed to say that. So we came up with that early on and we were not allowed to say that. But it reminded me of like, there's like military operations, like Operation whatever. So I stand by the naming of it, but
Andy, I have theorized that we will see more Operation Italy dupes in the future. I think that while they could not have happened on Survivor 48, I do feel like that what they did, what you all came up with, and then what the producers and the editors did with it, I think was so inspired. I think that we're going to see more caper type, at least plans. What I think, though, is that I think that we will also see a version of it where, okay, it's Operation Italy, but what Sam doesn't know is we're actually blindsiding him. Like, he thinks Operation Italy is on, and then that somebody who, you know, is in on the operation is actually gonna get blindsided thinking that they're in on this big caper.
I think there's validity to that. I think that, first of all, I would just love that. If anyone wants to go out there and try a move and name it, I think that that would be amazing. I think the one thing, and I've said this before, but I think you're very much right because operationally, I think the secret sauce behind it was that it was like kind of organically came about. And I don't think anyone forced that to happen. I just think it was like a confluence of aligned interests, and the end game of Survivor 47 just happened to be like we just happened to have as much fun with it as
Yeah.
possible. And so I'm really happy that it came together the way that it did. Um, but the thing is, you know, if people want to try it and fail, like that's going to be really entertaining too. So yeah, we'll take that. You know, I think
Yeah.
you said this on our podcast, but 48 could have maybe used it operationally. You know what I mean? So like,
I think I might have said that. Yeah. All right. So you've made this comparison between Survivor 47 and Survivor 48, and whether it was a conscious decision or not, that you feel like that the people who played Survivor 48 had one kind of vibe, and the people
yeah,
who played Survivor 47 had a different kind of vibe.
yeah.
That do you feel like are there any people that could have swapped casts without missing a beat?
Oh my God, that's a fascinating question. And just like knowing sort of the inside, like there are some like misconnections like throughout the casting process of this past cycle. Like there are people who could have been on one season, someone who was going to be on another season, and it's just mind
Sure.
blowing to think about the butterfly effect that could have occurred. I think that off the top of my head, a lot of people who were in the pre-merge of Survivor 48 would have thrived on Survivor 47. I
Hmm.
guess one example is Thomas. I think that I mean I think he was set up to do very well in this season as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think he would definitely not have missed a beat
No.
because if we want to stop down and like define the different vibes, I think I think people have like sort of categorized this, but I think Survivor 47 definitely had more of a super fan vibe, more of a people who wanted to you know like people say like a strategist vibe. I do think that's very true. Whereas 48, the thing that kind of blew my mind about 48 is that they had this big run of very physical challenges. And I don't know if like it's compares like that strongly to Survivor 47, but my sort of thought that there's like this invisible concept with Survivor 48 where they really wanted to find like big beefy people on purpose and have them run the most physical challenges possible. Because if you compare the physicality between Survivor 48 and Survivor 47, I do think that there's like a market like difference, right? So um, it's fascinating to think about all the what ifs and like how they split it because one change could totally have changed the season. But yeah, I think Thomas would have killed it on 47.
Yeah, Thomas certainly I think would have been good on 47. I think a couple other folks, Bianca
Yeah,
certainly,
yeah,
you know, Stephanie also I think
yeah.
maybe fits in better on 47. But I'm
Okay.
looking at the 47 pre-merge and I'm trying to think back that would they have fit better on 48? Not John
Oh,
Lovett probably. John Lovett was probably
he could have.
fine.
He could have. John Lovett could have. I don't know.
You think John
Um,
Lovett would have been in the alliance with Kyle and Eva and Joe?
so I guess by that logic, we just have to find someone who was very physically strong, but
Mhm.
did not thrive on
TK.
Survivor
TK would have
47.
been right
TK.
there.
So yeah, TK. Um, well, the thing is, because listen, and I think people have made a lot of comments about this, and this is like no shade or disrespect to anyone. I certainly had a very poor track record with the challenges, but people noted that Vula was not as stacked as the other two
Hmm.
tribes on Survivor 48, and so I wonder what could have been like if TK was on Vula, for example. How different would that have gone? Because maybe he would have sort of upgraded their challenge prowess. Maybe there would not have been Vula would not have been a sort of disaster tribe, which is, I would say, as a side note, I think one of the things that set up Survivor 47 very well was not having a disaster tribe because um, those just really changed the merge dynamics. Whether or not there's like one tribe that's like completely decimated or not, anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, you never know. It's the butterfly effect is like really insane. Like and truly, one little change could like make it. It could have changed like both seasons, like seismically.
You said something earlier about a lot of people feel like that all of the new era seasons are very cookie cutter and samey same.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you speak a little bit more to the differences you see in when you look back at the new era seasons?
That's an amazing question. So from a casting standpoint,
From whatever standpoint you feel like that they
yeah.
are very different.
So I think that nothing crazy has happened to change casting and how they cast seasons. It has changed over time, and they've instituted some real changes, like the 50% BIPOC sort of
Mhm.
mandate that happened in the new era. But um, I really think, and this goes back to basics. This is something that people like have said a lot, right? But I think the reason that the new era gets billed as being very samey same is really there's just a lack of anything different. There's a lack of theme. Like I know that production struggled toward the end of the 30s to like keep coming up with compelling themes to make seasons stand out, but they really benefited from having that just from a sort of memorability standpoint, and it really helped differentiate season to season to season. Whereas in the new era, they do some things that really don't help this, right? So obviously every season just has a number, right? But also they do this thing that kind of drives me nuts, where every fall season has to be red, blue, yellow, and
Mhm.
every spring season has to be orange, green,
Why do you
purple.
think they do that?
I don't know. I don't know why they do that. It's
Yeah.
like
Is it
I
like
don't
order
know.
the new
Yeah,
buffs? What do we
yeah.
need? Like, okay, just get red, blue, yellow, green, orange, and purple.
I don't know why that frustrates me so much, but it kind of does, because if even if things changed a little bit like that, you can at least like have a different sort of visual season by season if they were just like a little bit more unique with it.
Hmm.
And so they do these little detail things that really make you sort of make these seasons blur together unless you're a big super fan. And then I think from a production and design standpoint, they've really conceptualized the new era as its own particular thing. It's its own particular sort of obviously phase of Survivor. And so how they viewed it is that they wanted to give these changes that they instituted at starting with Survivor 41. They wanted to give them room to breathe. So they didn't want to like deviate from them too quickly. If something really didn't work, they would take it out. But like three tribes, earn everything. You earn your supplies, no rest, mergatory, all these different things. Beware advantage. How they look at it is, okay, we want these things to stop being twists and start being regular mechanisms, so that players can see how they work, see what works, what doesn't, and then new players can come in with a fresh perspective and innovate on that. And I think this is something that Jeff has said in recent interviews. Like I think something that he lauds is Rachel's use of shot in the dark, which was very, very good, right? And I think that was a payoff of things that they've set in motion since the start of the new era, where okay, we want these things to be given a chance and new players to sort of build on it so that they can pay off, and we don't want to pull out of this too early. And I think from that standpoint, I think they it kind of did pay off for them, because that is something that I appreciate. Like I don't love when things are sprung on players. Um, and again, like whether it's Survivor, whether it's Big Brother, because if the unexpected happens, people will just play tight. But if these things like the shot in the dark and the beware advantage become more normalized, then people have
Hmm.
time to use their imagination and sort of build on that. And so that is why I think that the format has stayed the same throughout the entirety from 41 to 49. I think there are some benefits to that because people have done really cool things, and a lot of things have paid off. Like they were probably waiting for a shot in the dark to pay off in a meaningful way, and it has happened. But as a downside, because they've given this format so many seasons of all new players, right? It I think history will view it as a sort of conglomerate clump of seasons, with a couple exceptions, and that's why when I love the run of 45, 46, 47, and 48 does like benefit from like they're all very different. They're all very different, and so that does help differentiate them somewhat. Even though from a design standpoint, I think they are pretty repetitive.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's something the show could be doing to make them feel more different, whether it's some kind of idea of a theme, or sure,
Yeah.
we're going to keep the shot in the dark and all these things
Yeah.
that we're building upon, but maybe, we have some other exile island type
Mm.
of like, okay, here's the new wrinkle for this season.
Well, the one thing that they do and they hang their hat on is the art. Like the art design of the season is
Right.
different and the logos and stuff. But as you're very well documented, like the number one thing they do is change the tribal council set. And so they
Mhm.
do spend a lot of effort on that. And so for someone like me,
They do spend a lot of effort on it,
yeah,
and I would say
yeah,
that I will die on this hill that you get me 100 Survivor fans, and maybe this season they can identify line up 100 Survivor fans and let's show them the set of the different tribal councils. See if any of them can pinpoint like what season is this? Do you know anything?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I no, I
I'm
to an
sure
extent
it's
I definitely
awesome when
agree.
you're there,
It
Andy.
is awesome when you're there. It is awesome when you're there, and they
It
like
doesn't read on television as being any different from any other season.
I totally get that because it's like tribal council. The running theme is that it's dimly lit and it's dark. Um, so I think it does help me. I do notice the differences, and that does help me differentiate it. Like even these like basic like aesthetic things, like it goes somewhat far for me.
Hmm.
But I think so. Going back to Big Brother, Big Brother, there's so much to criticize about Big Brother. We could spend let's have another 4 hour podcast
Yeah.
talking about what they do wrong, but I don't think that they're ever accused of having samey same cookie cutter seasons. I think that there's a very distinct vibe from each season, even though they
Yeah.
number them. They don't have
This is true.
titles.
Not every
Yeah,
Big Brother, but they do a little bit more with the production design
yeah,
and
yeah,
like the
yeah.
overall theme.
So yeah,
Like
yeah,
this last year, we had, of course, Ainsley, and
yeah.
now don't ask me what Big Brother 25 was. I can't recall.
The multiverse.
The
I
multi,
remember this stuff.
the multiverse. What did they
You
do
don't
in the
remember
multiverse?
that? This they had the Humillaverse. They had the superhero verse, whatever that was.
I
You don't
remember
remember?
that Corey went to like the upside down,
Yeah, the scary verse. He went to the
the
scary
scary
verse.
verse. Yeah,
So
I
that was
understand.
silly. And Big Brother is very, very silly and unserious in many ways. But I think that does help Big Brother because the aesthetic and the theme is so differentiated. And it's not just at a tribal council. Like every scene, every shot in Big Brother is a very brightly lit shot of the room in the house. And
Mhm.
so these are not game design. These are sort of I know that this is more surface level, but I do think from when you're talking about a production or like a TV production, these simple things can really help on a season to season basis, keep it just a little bit fresh and like help differentiate them. So Survivor's a bit in a tricky situation because they only have one set, which is Tribal Council.
Mhm.
The rest of the show is on these beaches that they keep reusing, and so those are completely the same. So
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the biggest adjustment for me watching Survivor 48. I had a great time watching Survivor 48, but it kind of messed with my head, like seeing the two of those beaches I spent so much time on. And I'm like, I know that log, like I know that exact log that they're sitting on, um, and so I mean that like sort of leads into a big criticism people have is that it's always in Fiji, right? So
Mhm.
that would
Look,
be
I
sort of
get that. That's like
yeah,
a
yeah,
financial thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That just makes sense. But it just feels like it's almost like in the way that like professional wrestling is like just always on. You just tune in and it never ends. It never goes away. I feel like that's what they're sort of going for of like, hey, listen, what do you want? It's a new Survivor. Just show up. Don't worry about it. Okay?
Yeah, and their hope, and I think this is semi-true, but I think their hope is that, when these seasons come and go, that they're going to be remembered by their players, the standout players on each season, and that is how the fans, like when I talk with fans now, that is how they differentiate newer seasons.
Mm-hmm.
When people don't have encyclopedic knowledge on who's on what season, they're like, oh, what was that? It's like, oh, that
The
was
one with this person.
Q and Kenzie and Charlie and stuff,
The
and
one
then
with
yeah,
Andy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, someone asked me like, "Oh, what season were you on? Were you with Dee and Austin?" I'm like, "No, I was with Rachel and Genevieve and Teeny." And they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So like once you have that like association with the players, because we are the only difference from
Hmm.
from season to season. So I mean, yeah, I think though that I think you were talking about this with Franny, I believe. Like season 50 is going to come, and then it's going to be its own thing. And it's going to be a big celebration. But then there's going to be seasons after that because I think Survivor's in a really healthy place. I think Survivor and Jeff, they're ready to go at least through season 60. But the 50s, they just have to be different than the new era, which is funny that it's called that because
Hmm.
as time goes on, it's really not the new era anymore. But the 40s is its own thing and had its own sort of stamp on
Yeah.
Survivor history. The 50s, they have to go back to the drawing board and think about what that's going to look like because it just can't be the same thing. And I'm excited about that because production, like I think they have a reputation for being stubborn, like not listening to feedback and sticking to their guns. But I think they know that 51 can't just be what 49 is. And so I'm excited for what they might change.
Do you know that?
Do I know that it's not going to be the same?
Do you know that they know that 51 can't be the same as what 49 is?
Do I know that for a fact? No, I do not know that for
Or
a
are you
fact.
doing wishful thinking?
I'm maybe manifesting it. But
Manifesting.
yeah, because at a certain point, here's what I know about them. Here's what I do know about them. They're very, very passionate. They're super passionate. They
No
really,
doubt.
really, they really care about Survivor. They are the opposite of being checked out. And I think, and they
The
pride
opposite of
themselves,
Big Brother.
the opposite of Big Brother, and they pride themselves on being creative and being
Hmm.
creators, and they create this thing, and they take so much pride in it. And I think if you're someone like that, you implement changes that you're excited about, and if the fans don't respond well to that, you get very you're inclined to be very defensive, and you're inclined to defend these things that you've come up with, and you're going to stick to them up to a certain point.
Hmm.
Because if you are a passionate creator, you're not just going to want to run the same thing over and over again. There's going to come a point in time where they feel like they want to, come up with new ideas and make changes, but it's going to be on their own time. Like if they were listening to the fans, they would have gotten rid of a lot of things by Survivor 43 or 44, and they didn't. They stuck to their
Hmm.
guns. But I think that they will look at the 50s as it's a newer era. It's like the post new era.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas that you would like to see for Survivor in the 50s?
Ideas I would like to see. That's a great question. I would love to see two tribes. Like, what the heck?
Hmm.
Like, why is it three tribes? So I think what would be amazing, what would be ideal is if a player is cast and they go out there and they don't know what to expect in
Yeah.
terms of how many people they're going to play with, who they're going to play with. So I was cast on Survivor 47. I had a very, very, very strong level of confidence that I was going to be on a season with three tribes of six. I was going to play with five other players. And I came up with a whole checklist of different strategies that is like particular to a small tribe. Um, did those all come to be? No, no. But
Yeah.
I had a confidence going. I could expect the expected, not expect the unexpected. So the best thing for them to do is mix it up, and that
Mix it
feeds
up.
into like an answer to that previous question, where how could they make seasons distinct? It's like you mix it up, you variety. Like this season was two tribes, the next
Yeah.
one's three tribes. You don't know what it's going to be. So I think that's a big change I want to see. As
It's
far as
wild.
yeah,
The last two tribes that we had was in Winners at War. We haven't had them in any version, not even
yeah,
like starting at three. Okay, now we swapped to two
yeah,
one
yeah,
season.
yeah.
We've never had two tribes at any point since season 40.
Yeah, basic variety and configuration could just go a really long way, I think. And I think it's good to have. So one benefit of having two tribes is that the tribe sizes will be bigger, right? Generally,
Hmm.
so it could be upwards of like 8 people to 10 people. I think that's really good because so in the premiere Survivor 47, I did this like math equation, right? So what it
Yes.
was I was calculating the amount of individual relationships that could exist on a tribe of six. So that's six choose two, which is 15, right? So, but the thing is, if you increase like the amount of people on a given tribe, but that increases like non-linearly, like it gets a lot bigger.
Sure.
And so if it's a tribe of 10, the amount of individual relationships is 10 times 9 divided by 2, which is 45,
Wow.
which is Which is a lot more. It's a lot more. It's a lot
It
richer. It's a lot more complex. It's like a lot more things that can happen. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's great for it to be sort of more densely connected like that, because, if you're in a small tribe and these 5 people just aren't your vibe, you're really out of options. But if you're on a tribe of 10 and this, like, the same, like 6 people don't like you, you still have an out, because there's going to be a much more variety of personalities. And if you just get like one ally, one person who wants to play with you, can make a world of a difference in terms of your game and just how exciting the tribe dynamics are. So that's something I would really look forward to, like if they start mixing it up.
Yeah.
And then since I'm on here, so I don't hate many of the new era changes. I think I've kind of see the perspective of letting things play out, like the beware advantage and the shot in the dark. I like the shot in the dark. There's one thing. There's one thing
Yes.
they need to get rid of. They just need to get rid of it. Mergatory. I hate Mergatory so much.
Andy, you're preaching to the choir.
I know I'm preaching to the choir, but every season when Mergatory comes along, it just drives me insane. Obviously, from like, there's like game reasons why it drives me nuts, but I think from like a branding standpoint, it's just like the worst thing, like worst change they've ever made, because the merge for 40 seasons prior was the most organic, amazing, landmark episode in the middle of their season. People, like fans, would just like go insane, like super excited for the merge episode. And a lot, like very often that would lead to a sort of pivotal vote where lines are drawn in the sand that really sets the tempo for the rest of the season. And they took something so organic and amazing in the middle of the season, and they've really diluted it. And it, like, first of all, and I'm both as a fan and when I was out there, number one, like conceptually, it really makes no sense, because if you take 3 things and combine them into one, what is that? That's a merge. That's a merge, no matter how you
Right.
want to say it arbitrarily.
But do you have a buff?
But but then, and so
did you
can't
earn
even get
that,
excited.
or are you looking for a freebie?
Yeah. Like an episode 6 every new era season, when you get the thing, and you're like, okay, we've all, you're all going to the same beach. Yeah. Like we're going crazy, but we really shouldn't, because we haven't made the merge yet. And so like, there's like an instinct of like, well, let's not celebrate yet. Like this would be really exciting, but no, we can't let this be exciting. And the fans feel the same way, because the fans want it to be the merge, because before the new era, we're waiting for that big Avengers sort of crossover of all the personalities that we've, become invested with in the pre-merge. And then there's just one glorious moment where they're all on the same beach and they all have a new buff and they're all getting to know each other, and it's chaotic and it's amazing in the best way. And for whatever reason, they've choked that in the new era. And so you're on the same beach, but you don't have a buff, and you're like, nope, we didn't make the merge yet. And secondly, we don't even know what to call it. We don't know what to call it. We call it Mergatory as fans, but that's not what the show calls it.
Sometimes on the screen they'll call it Merge Tribe.
It's wild. And so when it was implemented, the reason is because we have to earn everything, right? But
earn everything, yeah.
So okay, but how do you earn the merge in the merge round? You either win a challenge or you survive a vote. That is survival. So like everyone has already earned that by making it to a certain stage of the game. Like that is how you would, that was how you would earn the merge. But it's just like this arbitrary sort of delay of calling it, the next phase of the game, merge. Yeah. We don't even know what to call it. And so it's just from a conceptual branding standpoint, it drives me insane.
It seems like that it was an idea that they really got invested in, that they've kind of pivoted away from, but they don't want to necessarily give up the idea, because it's like, that you have to save face, like, but then the next part of it, Andy, you're just getting started, because it's like, all right, everybody, here's your buffs. You're merged. Okay. So, all right, next step. Make 2 groups. I think have 2 groups. You're gonna go into 2 different tribal councils today. Merge tribe.
There are a lot of analysts and podcasters who definitely just like, I lost my train of thought. But no, I really don't. I don't like how. Oh yeah, here's what I was going to say. The merge used to be really the best part of a season. It really was like the most
Mhm.
exciting, and it really set the tempo. And there were like important votes that were happening. And I think a lot of people have commented, and they're right, that in the new era, it is definitely the worst part of every season. Like
Yeah.
definitely the Mergatory episode and then the split part. It stops all the momentum, and like,
I'll say that you guys, coming out of that had an exciting vote.
So with Survivor 47, we all got on the same beach, and the Mergatory vote was Rome, which was entertaining in its own right, as
Mhm.
far as especially how they told the story. But it was a slam dunk, basic
Sure.
consensus vote, right?
Sure.
And then Survivor 47 had actually a wrinkle unique to the new era, where we didn't vote out two people on the same night. We split up into two different, teams. But the team that lasted the longest would just get immunity, and only one of the side would have to go to tribal council. And that resulted in an exciting moment just because of the advantages at play, and Rachel played her safety without power. So that was it's one thing, but still, even in Survivor 47, I think the vote that like set the tempo for the rest of the game, that would be typically classified as the merge vote, was the one after that, which was the
Yeah.
Sierra vote.
Yeah.
And so like that was a good vote. There's a lot like a strategy involved with that, like a lot to unpack. But it didn't happen. That wasn't the merge vote. Whereas like I just think that they've overbaked this so much. So my number one request, I don't know if production listens to these podcasts. Production, I'm on your side. Like you're great. You come up with
Andy's
so
on
many
your
amazing ideas.
side.
You come up with so many amazing ideas. I defend you all the time. Just please get rid of Mergatory. Please. This is just my one request. Like for Survivor
Yeah.
51, I want them to drop their buffs and just get a new one, and it just be the merge. But that's my rant.
Now, Andy, that was not something that was on the ballot for Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans.
Yeah.
Did you have any spicy takes on the votes?
The Survivor 50 votes. I think my main impression was that the things that were actually up for the vote, they were very sort of clever about what they were putting up for a vote, because not too many of those things are what's very hotly contested by the fan base, or things that like we would love to have a say on. I think the one exception, of course, is the fire making challenge. So I guess my hottest take is that I could take or leave the fire making challenge. I don't think it's like a blight against Survivor. I think it's so. Here's what I like about the fire making the final four fire making challenge is that, again, this is kind of what I said earlier, but at a certain point it stops being a twist, and now it's just a mechanic in the game. I hated it, and I was outraged as Josh Wiggler when it was a twist on Triple H and it was like sprung on everybody. And I felt that to be kind of unfair, but it stayed.
To be fair, I don't remember if that was one of the things that Josh Wiggler was really furious about.
I think someone was really heated.
Adam Klein was.
I think it was Adam Klein. All right. I think
don't remember
a lot of people
if
are
Josh Wiggler was like, and look, maybe he was. Okay.
So it could be. So I don't know. I remember someone coming onto the podcast after Survivor 35. They had a full-on crash out, and you know how much I have a good crash out every now and again, but they hated the fire making challenge. And I felt that for 35, but from 36 to now, I'm ambivalent about it, or I'm apathetic about it. I could go either way, because what I do like about it is that it's very, very known. And I think that it influences people's strategy. So let's talk about Survivor 48. I think that Kyle and Camilla used it really to their advantage in a certain way, in this respect, where they knew that they were a duo. They knew that they were working tightly together, and they were doing things together. They were building a sort of shared resume. They were doing things together that they could like speak on and have a winning final tribal council, especially next to Joe and Eva. So they built a clear winning path for one of them. But what could go wrong is if they take a shot at each other too soon. That happens a lot, like, I don't know, like people argued that Jesse went for Cody too soon because one of them was definitely on track to win. You know what I mean? So that could go wrong if they really do have this shared idea that one of them deserves to win. But with that, if there's just a vote, then there's just a natural dilemma where, okay, you either have to sit next to each other and one of you really loses out by getting maybe demolished by the other at Final Tribal Council, or you have to find the right time to take a snipe at the other one. So that's very interesting. I mean, so that's actually an argument why you should not have the fire making challenge. But what I was impressed by was that Kyle and Camilla used it to their advantage, where it's really a good compromise to have them still work together deep into the game. Fire making wasn't there, then they would have to take a shot through a blindside and a vote, and then that becomes this game of chicken where one of them could have pulled the trigger too early. But they were both very much on the same page that if they get to 4, fire is going to happen, and one of them is going to get to final tribal council, and one of them is going to win the game. And I think having that sort of middle ground or sort of compromise, something that 2 allies can rationalize of like, this is when this is like, then we're going to like break off. This is where one of us is going to eliminate and one of us is going to have a good chance to win. I think that is a good enough deal for both of them to have actual mutual interest all the way through Final Four. And I like that they utilize that to that extent. So for me, like, it could either be there or not be there. The other side of the token is that, like, for example, Australian Survivor still has a vote at the Final Four, and that is not as cut and dry as you may believe. Like, some really interesting things could happen if 4 people are voting. But so I guess that's my spicy take, is that I don't hate that so much.
I don't know if you voted or not, Andy. Did you vote for a lot of twists?
So is this the question where there's dynamic power or strategic power?
I don't remember if that was about twists or that was about advantages.
Okay. I did not vote. So yes. I just looked at it. Maybe I just didn't feel the power as a voter that I could have, like maybe that is democracy in action. Everyone gets to say, maybe I didn't take enough advantage of that. I did not vote. I think that when it comes to twists, I think a middle ground is perfect. I don't know. With Survivor design, like, I think that, like, they probably found the perfect sweet spot in the 30s. I think like, or maybe early 30s, when we're talking about Cambodia, Ko-Rong, and Millennials vs. Gen X. So now Game Changers has the advantage again, so maybe they had a mistake of putting in too many idols, which they really don't anymore. They really
I mean, this season was remarkably sparse of idols. How did that compare to 47? How many idols did we see in 47? We had all the pre-merge idols. Yeah.
So here's how it works in the new era. So there's going to be a beware advantage planted on each of the 3 tribes.
Yes.
If someone finds it and then gets an idol, but then plays it or whatever, or it gets flushed, there's going to be a new beware advantage planted on that beach. But it's going to be easier to accomplish, I think, generally speaking. But then you get to Mergatory, and they do not plant a 4th idol in the jungle of the merge tribe. So in 47, a sort of merge idol was entered into the game through the auction.
Yes.
And Rachel found that with the prize. And then
was
in 48,
there a merge idol in 48?
There was an idol up for grabs when Eva went on her singular journey, and she
no, that was knowledge is power.
Yeah, it went. No. Her first one, her secret night escapade.
Oh, that was escapade.
It was she.
Yes. Okay.
She arrived there with an extra vote.
She could have kept going.
So that was the merge idol on 48.
What gives,
so
Andy, do they not like idols so much?
I think that they actually listened to the fans when people were complaining about having too many idols in the game. I don't really hate this decision so much. I think it's possible that they've overcorrected, but I guess what I was saying was, by the time we get to Game Changers, they have made the mistake of pumping in too many advantages, which there reaches a sort of critical mass where it becomes kind of it dominates the game too much. And so I think in the new era, or maybe the latter new era, they've been much more restrained with how many idols they're going to put into the game. I'm not going to complain about that. I think that's cool. Could they add one more? Could they because as they have it right now, people go into the merge tribe of the new era season and they just go look in the jungle, but based off of recent precedent, there's nothing there. And maybe if there was one idol there, that could help a little bit.
I guess what I would think would be probably the better way to go. Okay, so have 3 in the pre-merge, and then sort of like, okay, we have a running tally on how many are in the game. But if we get down to now there's just 1 in the post-merge, I feel like that there should be 2 up until, I'll say, the final 6. Like if like let's say like one of the 2 idols gets played at 7, we have an idol hidden for 6 and 5.
Yeah.
2 idols in the post merge, I think in modern Survivor feels fine
Yeah.
to me. 1 seems a little tight.
I completely agree. I think what you said is absolutely ideal. But I think it's like worth noting that they're a lot closer to having the proper amount of advantages than they used to be. Even now, I'm thinking like 43. There was like too much. Remember, like Owen had this confessional during Mergatory where he was like counting all the known advantages, and it was like way too much. They've corrected that, and so I think if you add one more idol in the jungle at the merge, then it's perfect.
Yeah. How about advantages? Are we having too many advantages?
Mm,
They kind of didn't make it
listen,
too
I
far
don't
in the
know.
game.
It's hard to talk about that with 48. I think there's one thing that Jeff said that was funny at the after show, where he was just like every season of Survivor, advantages played a really big role in this season. And I listen, I'm like, that is truly false. That's completely inaccurate. Like advantages simply did not play a big part of this season. People had them, and like
Thomas may have gotten voted out because he had one.
And and to be fair, the winner had a successful idol play, so I'll give it that, which is actually pretty rare these days. Rachel and Kyle both did it, but not many people before that recently. But this was not a season of
pre-merge idol play at that.
Yeah, but this was not a season of people whipping out their advantages and changing the game with their advantages. And so that's another thing that's kind of unique and compelling about Survivor 48. Survivor 47 was similar-ish. I mean, again, like Rachel had a very dazzling idol play to knock me out. It was like one of her winning moves, right? But it was not all over the place. And I think that you just go back to recent Survivor history, and I think there are too many advantages at play. So this is ultimately better. Now with season 50, I don't know, because I don't know what the fans are going to vote for, because first of all, those ballots were like very leading in certain directions, right? I think a lot of people have noticed that. But I think just like basic voting psychology, if you don't hate it, then you're just gonna kind of vote yes, I think, unless you feel very strongly that something should be gone. Like a good example of that is a tribe swap. So one of the things on the ballot is like, should they swap tribes? People are split on that. People don't feel incredibly strongly that there should be a swap every season, or that there should never be a swap. It's just kind of this one, whatever. But if you put it up for a ballot, people are just gonna, I think they're gonna like have a slight bias. They're just putting it in there just to vote yes instead of no. And so I have if you were to like ask me like all the different questions, I think I could like put in a good prediction of what I think a lot of them are not that hard to predict how the vote's going to go.
Yes, and I think that the people asking the question, I think, probably already know the answer that the audience is going to come back with on most of these things.
Yeah, but so I don't know.
Any great lawyer doesn't ask a question they don't already know the answer to.
So I agree that that's how they set it up. I don't know if they are like have their finger on the pulse as much as
that's fair.
The super fans do. Like, because I think one thing that's telling is I don't know if they really asked the right questions to create compelling, interesting decisions for fans. Because one of the things that was up for vote is, should there be idols or no idols? Now,
that was the big one.
I have a very strong opinion that it's a slam dunk that there will be idols, right? But I think that let's take Jeff, right? So there are certain criticisms that he hears a lot, and I don't know if they get taken in a certain way over time and become straw men. But like when people say that there are too many advantages, or there's like they get confused with the beware advantage and the shot in the dark, blah 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 blah. One thing he says is like, "Oh, so you want no idols? You want no idols then? Like you want back to basics?"
Yeah, it's a straw man.
It's a straw man. People say it from time to time, but I don't think that's a consensus opinion that idols have ruined Survivor. Yeah. It's like one of the best implementations they've ever had, and people love the idols. But so it's kind of telling that they even put it up for a vote, because obviously most people are going to say yes.
Yeah. Okay. Andy, the people have been very patient and they've waited a long time.
Yeah.
For your entire Survivor career, we have always referred to you lovingly as Baby Andy. Yes. And there's always been a question about, what is the lore behind Baby Andy? Can somebody explain it to me? And You have resisted the urge
Yes,
to
yes, yes.
just spill it.
Yeah.
Do you want to take people on that journey?
I definitely think it's time to do the baby Andy lore drop. I would have
Yes.
thought it would have come to light at some point during Survivor 47, but Survivor 47 is come and gone. A whole other season is come and
We had
gone.
too much other
And
stuff to talk about.
too many pressing other news items. We have not come back to address the baby Andy mystery. I'm very happy to go through it today, leave no mystery left, which
Mm-hmm.
is good because I think at the end of the day, only I really know the full sort of journey of baby Andy.
I thought
And
I know it, but maybe the way Andy's talking, maybe I don't know the whole story.
I'm going to get very detail oriented. I'm going to go in the weeds because some people get a nickname just like that. It's very simple. I think this one had a lot of twists and turns.
Yes.
And it ended up just with me having a nickname, which was Baby Andy. So here's the story. So I first became a patron of Rob's podcast in 2019. I was a big super fan for years before that, but I found, Rob is a podcast. No, I found Rob as a podcast during Ghost Island, but then I was listening for a bit. I finally became a patron in 2019. The season that was airing was Island of the Idols. Everyone was super excited for Island of the Idols. Yeah, we had the statues. There's a lot of hype because Winners at War was going to be around the corner. Everything like that. I finally, bit the bullet and spent $5 or $10 to become an RHAP patron. And I think, in my opinion, I came in hot because truly, and most people know this, one of the very, very coolest and most special parts of Rob's podcast and being a patron is that if you are a patron, you can call in and you can talk to Rob Cesternino, who's a Survivor legend and is such a big podcaster. And just by being a fan and being a patron, you can actually call him up, and he spends time every week to talk to Survivor fans. And I can't think of any other community that has that much access to the creator. I thought that was really, really cool. And so, as much as I was very nervous to call in, when I first became a patron, I called in during Island of the Idols. We had a really fun conversation. I talked about how I know every tribe name in Survivor history, which is still true. And so it was
Which is
a
not
really
my strong
positive.
suit.
No, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Very positive
Okay.
experience. And then I started calling in a lot. I started, because once you get a taste, I think you've experienced this a lot. Someone, comes in with an energetic call, you start seeing them, very
And
regularly.
look, I love that also.
Yeah,
To me, I feel like that the callers, especially the people that are like the colorful callers who call in, it makes me so happy. It's like,
yeah,
for me, this is like, I'm watching reality TV of like, well, look at these interesting people out here in the world that are calling in, and they're all like hilarious and interesting.
Clearly a reality television hotbed. You got me. Who else?
Yeah.
Kevin Jacobs called in.
Mm-hmm.
The list goes on.
Sure.
So yes, so I'm coming in hot as a patron. I'm doing all these calls, but you say one little comment at the end of like my third or fourth call. You said, "Hey, this guy Andy, I think he needs a nickname." You said that.
Yeah.
I think it's probably because my last name is hard for some people to pronounce. That could be it. I don't know. But you're like this Andy guy, this new patron, like he needs a nickname. And I listened to that and I took that in. Then what happened next? What happened next was that I participated in the Robin Akiva Hot Takeoff #1. This is something that, if you don't know Robin Akiva need a podcast, really, really fun. Bunch of miscellaneous
Random ideas. We just watched all the Mission
Random ideas.
Impossible
Yeah.
movies on
Yes.
3X.
Yes. So I submitted my hot takes. I had one hot take in particular that I had felt for a while, and to this very day, I stand by this hot take. And the hot take that I really truly believe in is my #1 platform is that we should normalize adult diapers. Now that sounds pretty out there. I will say off the bat that Stephen Fishback has praised me multiple times for having the same exact idea. So I'm in very good company.
Oh, wow.
But the thing about normalizing adult diapers, first of all, if you don't agree, it's kind of ableist. I'm just going to say that off the bat. But I think that as a society, I don't think that we have solved the problem of like a lack of access to public restrooms when we need it. I think there's a lot of shame involved with, having certain conditions or whatever that's hard to use the bathroom on your own time without the shame involved. And myself, I'm not afflicted per se. I do have a very small bladder, so this like influences my beliefs. But I think that, you know, the underwear that we wear as adults has on purpose, it has no absorbent capabilities whatsoever. It on purpose doesn't help you out in a sticky situation. Sorry, no pun intended. And but like when you're out and about, especially me, I live in New York City. They're just like it's hot. There's a
Yeah.
hostile lack of access to public restrooms, and so I think that it's stands to reason that we should just have this normalized and like be an accepted part of society. I would call it, you know, phase one, just underwear that can absorb liquid, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my thing.
Now, if you wanted to do this,
Yeah.
who's stopping you? Are you afraid that you feel like that maybe people will be able to detect? Is Andy like I looks like that maybe that there's like a puffiness that do you think that he's wearing? Like, are you worried about the judgment?
I think you bring up a great point that I should be the change that I want to see in the world.
Can't you just start
100%.
doing it?
I
You
could
got
be
me
a
thinking. I'm like, oh,
I
maybe I
could
should like just in case like the podcast is going good.
I could be a leader in this space and start doing it myself. You're absolutely right, and thank you for holding me accountable. But I think that what I would call for is just awareness of like, why are we shaming people who need them? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And if we're shaming people that we need who need them, why would we shame people who it would make their life better or more convenient? And
Sure.
so, you know, I and I think if we were able to do a sort of sea change or normalize this as a society, then we could develop, you know, better, more convenient, more efficient, affordable, you know, uh, fashion technology that can help us out. So
I think
anyway,
I'd be
that
so
is
nervous though. Like, what if it doesn't like, okay, you're really like, you know, crossing your fingers and like, okay, I'm in the hands of science right now. Like, hope this works.
but if you're in a desperate situation in public and there
Sure.
is no access, you're
Sure.
already in a desperate situation. It's
I
just
guess so.
simply you have no recourse, you have no last resort, and
Hmm.
so that is my opinion. I stand by it to this day. Anyway, that was my primary hot take. Um, did
And
not
it
have
went
rave
far. It
reviews.
was a good take.
You would think that this is the Mandela effect. It did not go far. I
Oh,
did
okay.
not even make it into the bracket. The I did not make it into the bracket at all. In fact, I was only mentioned on that podcast as a dishonorable mention, as a take
Oh.
so egregious and ridiculous that Kirsten had to call it out as
Hmm.
absurd. And so
Yeah.
that's the only airtime it got on Robin and Kivanita podcast itself. But then something very fortuitous happened a week later. Kirsten McInnes, the very arbiter of the hot takeoff, was going to be on Twish, but she did not want to participate in the quiz. So Jordan Kalish had to find a pinch quizzer. I met him at the Island of the Idols RHAP event. I was tapped to go in for Kirsten McInnes.
Yes. I remember that
Very,
night, the Island of the
very,
Idols, know-it-alls.
very fun podcast. But if you want like, you know, a reference to this, this is the Survivor Island of the Idols episode 7, Wiggle Room plus Twish. This is the episode. So while you and Kirsten and Jordan are recapping this episode,
Not
which
normally
Jack
a part of Wiggle Room, that I guess there must have been no exit interview that week, right?
Jack Nichting was the boot. I don't know if he had an exit interview or not, but that was the
Hmm.
format. And
Yeah.
so while the three of you are riffing, I'm not on the podcast yet. The three of you are riffing about a quote that Boston Rob had on the episode. He and Sandra were talking about the players, and Sandra was like, you know, Rob, I'm going to make a bet that a woman's going to win the season. And Boston Rob goes, you know, I was born at night, but not last night, right? So,
Yeah.
and
No
and
way.
the three of you were making a meal of that. You loved that quote. You were riffing about it, and you started making all these jokes about people being babies because they were born last night.
Yeah.
And then right after I come on the podcast, we compete in Twish together. I win because the tiebreaker was name tribe name, you know,
Oh
identify
my
tribe
God.
names. And you gave Jordan a lot of crap, as you tend to do, which is, you know, that's
Speaking
fair.
of an
Like,
adult
that's
diaper, yeah.
pretty wild that was the tiebreaker. But I did win, and it's a point of pride.
Like a
that
Slumdog Millionaire for you.
It's a point of pride that I'm the only person to win Twish and then go on Survivor. You know,
Wow.
I think usually it's like the inverse of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I win, and I'm like talking with Kirsten, and I'm like, Kirsten, we made a great team, even though you snubbed my hot takes. And then Kirsten is like, oh, what? I'm sorry. And I'm like, well, I had the one about adult diapers. And then you all just, Jordan Kalish could not stop laughing. He
Yes.
went in full bait Blake mode for people
Yeah.
who
Oh my
know
God.
Twitch history. And we were dissecting my adult diaper hot take, which I stand by to this day. Again, you go to the end of this podcast, you're going to listen to the whole exchange. And at the very end, Kirsten goes, maybe you are just a baby. Oh, Andy, you're just a baby. So she says that. So,
Yeah.
And then in the following week or two, you wanted to call me adult diaper Andy. And I'm like, that's just too on the nose. That's just not
Yeah.
like, so baby Andy came shortly thereafter. And that is the history of baby Andy.
Wow.
It was very much a walk through all of the various RHAP corners, many podcasts,
all the places you got.
A really good snapshot of RHAP in 2019. So there you go. That's the story.
Do you think if Aysha got to the merge and you got to the point where you were interacting with Aysha in the game, would you that is there a universe where she calls you baby Andy, or she's gonna downplay?
I want to give you an exclusive. This is another thing for people to go to. If you want to go to the RHAP archive, we're gonna fast forward to Survivor 41 Q&A. Episode number I don't remember, but it's the double split tribal. So first Nasir goes and then Evie goes. And Aysha is your co-host on the Survivor Q&A. And I am a caller.
Wow.
And so we have a whole exchange of two future Survivor 47 contestants talking with Rob about Survivor 41. We also start talking about Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. And it was a whole moment and a whole exchange between myself and Aysha years before we were on Survivor together.
Yeah. It's like one of those lost flashbacks.
Yeah. It is like an encounter like that. So very, very cool. I'm gutted to this day that it didn't work out for us to actually have interactions on the island of Survivor 47. But,
would you have liked that though, if like you were then like known, like your Survivor name became Baby Andy, like they called you that on the show?
Oh, okay. No, I love Baby and I embrace Baby Andy as a niche sort of patron. I'm going to go so far as to say that from here on out, you are only allowed to call me Baby Andy if you are a patron. If you are a Robert's Podcast patron, you have to subscribe, and then you have the complete right to call me Baby Andy. But if you just heard it through the grapevine or whatever, you simply cannot call me that. So I'm happy that I got to go on Survivor, and to most people, I am simply Andy. But given that the Baby Andy sort of, it's the lore is exactly as big as it needs to be, and not everyone is called.
It's like an endearing family name. Like my family calls me Robbie. Nobody calls me that outside of like the inner circle.
This is sort of the opposite direction, but my whole family calls me Andrew.
Oh,
I'm Andrew to my family.
Why so formal?
That's just what it was. Like, that's the name that my mother gave me. But as soon as I entered school, like my friends would always call me Andy. So I definitely am Andy. Like, I feel very, very confidently self-identify as Andy, but that is my family name. So it's funny, how different things come about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I feel like that's a little bit maybe with my kids, Dominic and Anthony, and Nicole will be like very much like, no, you're Dominic, you're Anthony. But then like Dominic says like, hey, when I go to school, the other kids call me Dom. Like the other kids want to be more informal. Okay. Sam is bringing something up. What do you got, Sam? What are we looking at here? What does Sam wrote up on the screen? Oh, here is me, Aysha, and Andy.
Yes, this is it.
And so this is Survivor 41. So this is me on a green screen in my closet. I don't look so happy. Might have been super hot. But are we playing something, Sam? Or we just
he's not playing it. It's a screenshot. Yeah. I encourage everyone to go to that. I don't know if it's behind Patreon. The patron door, but
what is that? Patron Q&A week 9 with Aysha, and that's deep in the archives over on the Patreon. Okay.
Incredible.
Yeah. Andy, what else is going on for you? Anything you want to talk about?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope we got enough Survivor 48 talk in there.
I think
I know
so. I
we
think we're at
bounce around.
Survivor
Yeah.
48 talked out
Yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah.
most part. I think this is probably going to be the last time we're going to talk about Survivor 48 for at least in terms of what happened in the season.
Okay, well, one last point. I think that Kyle is a very, very strong winner, and I
Sure.
think that the
No
new
doubt.
era, say what you will, or I mean, I love the new era, generally speaking, produces very good winners who play really good games. I think it's interesting to compare and contrast if we're talking about 47 versus 48. Comparing Rachel and Kyle is very interesting. I think that they play very different games, of course. I think
Mhm.
what's interesting is that they both have, people have long talked about this. They both do have, I must say, the winner sparkle. They have the winner sparkle, and they both have similar temperament as well.
Mhm.
And and they're both very smart, and so they have a lot of these similarities. But their winning paths were, very much different. I think that on, on Kyle's side, I think that he was completely able to demonstrate mastery of something that we had to interrogate Rachel on not proving so much, was just the ability to use social strategic wiles to stay in the game and have things work out, votes work out how they want, in sort of the fundamental sense. So he definitely did a very, very good job of that. And I think in retrospect, we could say that Survivor 48 was a little bit boring in the post merge because there was like this big blocky piece that is Joe and Eva in the middle of the game board. And it was frustrating to see that it wasn't busted wide open. But I think piecing everything together, it's very clear that there were the people around them saw them as well, like, not to like be too whatever about it, but like as the game piece that they can use to further
Yeah.
their own game and win sitting
Okay.
next to them. And so Kyle was the player best able to do that. And so his game plan worked absolutely perfectly. And he did, made a lot of smart moves along the way. And I think what's amazing is he also had that social like ability to like he was not, obviously he wasn't targeted. And yeah, I forgot what he's going to say. I was going to say, but obviously a very likable guy. But the thing is, so I want to give a point to Rachel on the other side of it though, because if looking at the game tape, if both of them were put in very sticky situations, very dangerous situations, I think that Rachel would proven to be, I would bet, a lot more money on Rachel getting out of that as opposed to Kyle. And so I think I love the sort of comparing and contrasting, and I think that you put those two impressive winning games together, you see a lot of like different Survivor skills at play.
I think I might say, I think if I was going to compare the two, and this is a
Yeah.
hard comparison to do, I think I might say Rachel. And this is why what I would say is that Kyle to me had a scene partner in Camilla
Mm.
that after Annika goes home, Rachel doesn't really have that person. And so Rachel was much more, yes, she had to win challenges. Yes, she had to win idols, but she basically had to go solo. Whereas opposed to Kyle, had a lot, and maybe Kyle has the better social bonds, and he did have to play the idol for himself in the pre-merge. But I think that post-merge, I think he had a easier road to get to the end than Rachel did.
And we can go back and forth, like, and we talking about winning games throughout Survivor history, but it's like, how impressive is it? How impressive was it on Kyle's part to have that relationship and maintain it? Camilla, a very smart player with a lot of win equity throughout the entirety of the game. Like, I think it was kind of a testament to some of his strengths that there were players willing to get in with Kyle to that deep extent. But you do have to again start to compare the cast that each of them played on. I think something that defined Survivor 47 was that I don't think so. The way that we played the game, and especially in the post merge, we just wouldn't let anyone get away with having this type of position. Like we had no like as a tribe, as a post merge tribe, we just had no mercy for someone being in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas 48 they just had different sort of viewpoints of the game and like what mattered, and something that Kyle was definitely able to benefit from. And so we'll see, we'll see. This is the next step. Who's going to play again? Like if each of them play again, like how are they going to do in a different situation? We'll get more data. But instead of ranking them against each other, I just think it's kind of beautiful that they played two different strong winning games.
Okay. Andy, besides Survivor and Big Brother, are there any other reality shows that you're watching?
Yes, I was really, really into Devil's Plan season 2 on Netflix.
Oh,
I am a big Genius fan. I have
you
been
watch the Genius
for a
Game
while.
UK?
So I am watching the Genius Game UK. It's not like completely captivating my attention, so I'm an episode behind. But I am watching it, and I'm definitely giving it a shot. But I have to say, like, I was really obsessed with your Genius coverage back in the day.
Yes.
The original run of Genius South Korea, you and Stephen Fishbach. You only did 2 seasons. We're still waiting on that third one.
Mhm.
But very, very, very much into that. And I will just take this moment to say that Devil's Plan on Netflix. Now, this is the same creator as the Genius,
Yes.
like the South Korean TV creator. And I think that Devil's Plan is very, very good. And I think it lives up to the Genius South Korea. Whereas Genius UK, we're gonna have to wait and see. I probably not even gonna get a season 2. But I mean, we'll see about that. But if anyone wants to check out Devil's Plan on Netflix, I think it's amazing reality TV.
Yeah. I've heard good things.
Yeah, I'm looking for more Devil's Plan coverage. I was like, all right, I'm ready to fire up the podcast. I don't really see anything yet, but
Well,
yeah.
we've had a lot going on, Andy.
Fair. I think there's a lot going on. This is a very
Okay.
fun time to be in the Survivor community. Very, very exciting.
Yes, but Andy, we appreciate you so much, Andy. Thank you for making some time, sharing all of your Survivor insights with us, giving us the lore of baby Andy.
Of course, absolutely my pleasure.
Hey, you still making those cameos?
Cameos going well. Yeah, I'm still doing the cameos. So hit up my Cameo. Like I said at the top of the podcast, my sabbatical is over. I am looking for full-time employment. Cameo could go a long way for me in the next month or 2.
Yeah.
But you know what? And I've said this before. It's like I love doing them because they're actually really like, at least for me, just speaking for myself, like the sort of requests I get are just feel really genuine, and like no one's like trying to like make me say anything crazy or like sus or embarrassing or something like that. It's just like people really like who love Survivor and like want to celebrate, a birthday or something. So I'm like more than happy to do it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And
there's the odd request or two, but like 99% great.
Pretty good. Okay, you'll take that. All right. Yeah. Well, Andy, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of the kind words you said about me and Rob as a podcast throughout this conversation.
Always. Rob has a podcast. It changed my life.
Okay. And
so I'm happy to be here.
Well, I really appreciate that. We'll put that on the poster, on the billboard. And anytime you want to call back in on any of these call-in shows, Andy, I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump into the Q&As that are happening now. So that's where you'll probably see me next. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Big Brother coverage, kind of around the corner. So
okay, coming this summer. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.